tested on all genres, I think, so far. And the toughest is the one which I grew up hating. बहुत पॉपुलर कहावत है कि हिस्ट्री और जोग्राफी बड़ी बेवफा, रात को पढ़ो और सुबह को सफ़ा. But it's been the last few years I've kind of rekindled my interest and love for history, especially when my children now they are in school and they are reading and studying and growing up, and I sit down to teach them, and that is when I realize that the way we teach history even today is not the way that I understood history well, and neither would I want my children to actually take a grudge, carry a grudge against, because it's taught in such a boring way where you have to, it's rote learning, you have to memorize dates, you have to memorize places, cities, and still, you know, the storytelling from the part of history is somewhere missing. I have two absolutely wonderful, phenomenal people with me on stage today. Their body of work speaks for them, and you know, the kind of work that they've done in their respective fields is makes it all the more appropriate for me to maybe start this conversation with a very political question. And that is that we are these days seeing this resurgence or this great interest in reclaiming history. How do you view it? Probably I should start with you, Chithra, first, and then maybe I'll move to Mahalakshmi. As to how do you view this entire situation where we are trying to aggressively reclaim our history and tell it the Indian way, the Indic way, and not from a Western lens?
So, this reclaiming history has become a very common thing. Everybody talks about it today. Some know what it is. Most people don't even know what it is, but everybody is talking about it. So, basically, many of our history books, textbooks, were written when the British were in India. Yeah. And like the speakers before us were saying, certain jargon, a certain mindset was there while writing those books. And we have continued to toe that line, despite the fact that I think now we know better with many more discoveries, many more pieces of literary evidence coming up, inscriptions, archaeological excavations and all of that. And I think now historians are far more confident of themselves than ever before. And therefore, with the help of all the sources that have come to light over the last, say, 50 years, 70 years, 100 years, and with the writing skills having improved, and with the number of discoveries that have happened, we need to reclaim. In the sense, we need to put it in proper perspective. Okay. Needs to be done in a very objective manner.
Mahalakshmi, I know you have slightly very political views on this, and I would love to hear you out on this. Yeah. Especially because we have a very clear demarcation of the left wing of history and the right wing of history. So how do you view this?
Yeah, I think actually this is a very, very important issue for all of us as professional historians. And as Professor Madhavan has just said, the important thing is that the historian has to come in, has to weigh in on history. I think let there be claims, let, you know, the creative writers, I'm very happy Mr. Sanghi and others talk about history, keep going back to history, but ultimately it is the historian who generates the historical narrative. So first, it should be the historian who is talking about you know, what is the narrative and how to build that narrative, because there's a methodology, there's a craft of history writing which we need to follow. Now, in one sense, I agree with what has been said by Chithra just now about how we need to think very carefully about the terminology, the jargon that we use and so on. This is a problem that that has two dimensions to it. One is, of course, because we are now very aware that what we read as historical sources themselves have to be seen in a nuanced way. So when we are looking at a text, whether it is a Veda, whether it is a Manava Dharma Shastra or any other Dharma Shastra, whether it is a Baudhayan Shulva Sutra, whether it is a Purana, whether Markandeya, this, that and the other, whatever be the source we are taking up, whether I am taking a Tamil text of the 12th century like Kalingathaparani, we have to look at the context in which it was written. And that is what we should be working towards. Rather than pull something out of context from there and present it as our history versus their history and so on. So a good professional historian does not buy this. I think it's largely a hype that's been created of a left versus right historian. All of us who are good historians know who we are. We all know that we respect the work that has been done. When I, for instance, teach something on early Buddhism, I will start with Professor G.C. Pandey's work on the origins of Buddhism. But Professor G.C. Pandey's politics was quite different from that of many of my teachers or even myself. That doesn't come in the way of respecting the scholarship. Similarly, that of Tarachand, the great historian, who wrote 5 volumes on the history of the freedom movement, but his original work, research work, was on the influence of Islam on Indian civilization. And you have to appreciate a person writing in the 1920s and 30s when there is so much of a colonial understanding of history, where we have already set in colonial historiography a Hindu history, a Muslim history, and a British history. So in a way, actually, those who are claiming to reclaim history, unfortunately, fall into that colonial trap because they go with this kind of a demarcation. For historians who look at history, we look at the broad periods. Are there any significant shifts? So between, say, let's talk about the medieval, because the medieval is where a lot of this claiming, reclaiming is being talked about. If we are talking about the medieval periods, are we seeing, even in North India, any significant shift in terms of social structures? When does that, or socio-economic structures, in terms of administration, how does that happen? How does it get manifested? And so on. So these become the questions that we are looking at, and not who is the ruler. How many temples or other institutions did somebody destroy? These are questions that have been dealt with by other scholars. But I think that we also need to see, how are we going to talk about the people? Mr. Myra said very importantly that let's talk about people. The same goes for history. How are we going to talk about the people if we are only going to be talking about the kings and the sultans and so on? There's something more. There's, in fact, a lot more to history than what they were doing. And I think, these then become the important talking points for historians, that when we say claims and reclaims, are we really talking about this from a historical perspective? Or are we bringing an ideological color to this discussion?
But that's what probably my next question stems from. When we are in a situation of literally weaponizing history in the current times, you as historians, how do you set aside your observations and not be influenced with what's happening around? I would like you to, Chithra, talk about it.
It's a very simple answer. Objectivity. You are reading something, you're a trained historian, you've been trained in methodology, you've been trained, like she very rightly said, to read books, profound books that have been written by historians in the past, but not to be swayed by their ideology. You know where to stop, you know how to sift the truth. you know how to take it. That's what training is all about. We are trained historians, professional historians. So we know instinctively and through training how exactly we should take the subject and not where the slant happens. And
You also made a very interesting observation, Chithra, in your last comment that, historians today are a lot more confident because there have been a lot more advancements in the way we have been discovering and rediscovering our own, uh, you know, our own monuments and our temples and, how we are studying them. Has there been any recent, and probably you can quote from your own personal example of where we were being, there was an official narrative which has been challenged by what you discovered in any of the temples? I mean, especially because you study the temples in the south, and there's a lot more conversation happening around the southern India.
nothing controversial, really.
No, I'm not looking for controversies, but still,
But
anything that
anything
helps
that has
us
been
understand.
challenged, you're saying? Not particularly, not in my subject because I deal in safe zones like architecture, sculpture, and inscriptions. But what I have come to know in my research, and this is already well known, but I am getting into the nitty gritties of it, is that today we talk about Tamil Nadu's history or Orissa's history, Bengal history. You see, it all really came together. We know that kings had multiple consorts. So Rajaraja Chola is known to have 13 queens. And one of those queens was a Lata lady from Lata Desha, which is Gujarat. And we also understand that in Tamil Nadu, we have quite a few Uriya inscriptions. They've been written there on the walls of temples. There's one temple near Pondicherry. There's a place called Munnur near Pondicherry where there are two temples with inscriptions of rulers from Orissa. How did that happen? Because they had come all the way. The Gajapati kings had come to today's Tamil Nadu. You can't define borders like that in the ancient times. They had come here, they had conquered, they had come up to Kanchipuram, and all these inscriptions were of gifts, donations to those temples. We also understand that the Konark temple is one of the most beautiful temples designed like a chariot. And a very famous historian called C. Shivaramurthy has this to say. He says that a princess of the Chola country was married to a king of the Ganga dynasty of Odisha, of Kalinga. And with her came from the Chola country to this part of the world the tradition of making a temple like a chariot. Those temples in Tamil Nadu, the mantapas have been made like chariots. They're very beautiful. That tradition came here, and the most beautiful temple ever created like a chariot is in Orissa. So this is how ideas went back and forth and back and forth. Nobody can claim that idea as theirs. It was all over India and completely intertwined.
But coming to the challenging of the popular beliefs and understanding, we are in the city which is known as the Kalinga of Ashok. And a very popular and a very recent change that even the NCRT books have made is that, this aspect of Ashoka, after reaching Kalinga and seeing the massacre, he had a change of heart and he became a Buddhist. Whereas it was challenged and said that, it happened much before he actually waged war here. There are certain such nuances that are coming into forefront and are being included in history textbooks. Mahalakshmi, how do you view this aspect of, trying to change history right from the point where children were being taught something from a colonial lens, yes, but the changes that are incorporated today, are you comfortable with those, or do you see, it not really doing justice to how we should be incorporating those changes in the way we teach history?
Right. I hope you'll ask me about recent shifts
yes,
in history
absolutely,
later,
absolutely,
because
yeah,
I do
yeah,
want to come in on that.
yeah.
But before that, what is the problem with the way in which history textbooks are being created today? The NCRT textbooks is one case study. However, I must say, Tamil Nadu did an extensive textbook revision maybe about 5 years ago. I'm not very sure whether it was 5 or 6 years ago. And I've seen those textbooks. This is the State Education Board. Let's also not forget that in India, majority of the children study in, in the state education system, under the State Education Board. But nevertheless, it's important to look at what the NCERT is doing. Now, in keeping with the NEP, what has happened is that it is under the rubric of social sciences that history has been tucked in. Two things here again. One is that I went through the list of names of those who are part of this textbook making process. I could not see one historian whose works have been published in journals or who is out there and has engaged with other historians. That's the first thing. The second thing is the history that is there is so shoddy. There's nothing else that one can say about it. For instance, class 6 textbooks. There is this thing on, there's just one chapter which is okay, which is on the Harappan civilization. And I think because the one person who is a trained, qualified and well-known archaeologist, Dr. Selva Kumar, is part of that board. Possibly, this is the reason. But at any rate, what you have is a chapter on culture and civilization in which, it's talking about the great Indian civilization and its culture and so on. When you look at that chapter, it's as if culture ends with ancient India. Okay? There's suddenly this kind of, running through in a few sentences of what else is there. But culture or civilization is like a river. It flows. It carries with it so much. So there is, for instance, just a simple thing where they have flagged the way in which the idea of India comes through. I think it's a very important issue to raise. And we have been discussing and debating this in public forums also, the idea of India that is Bharat. And it's true, Bharatavarsha is one of the names by which initially a small part of North India was denoted. How do we know this? Because the first inscription comes from Kalinga. It comes from very close to us, from the Udaygiri caves. The Hathi Gumfa inscription, Kharavels, that's where we have the first, it's a Prakrit inscription. First reference to Bharatavarsha. But where is Bharatavarsha for Kharavel? It is between Magad and Mathura. That is the extent of it. So, only gradually the idea of a Bharatavarsha, which is larger, which may encompass a broad area. So, Jambudvipe, Bharatavarshe, this is how in the Puranas and in other texts you have the references. That idea of Bharatavarsha itself is evolving. One. And it is evolving primarily because of the religious and ritual and other kinds of knowledge keepers like the Brahmins, the Brahmanas and others as well, who are moving into different parts of the Indian subcontinent. They are carrying this idea of a Bharatavarsha which is unified, but it's not. They are also aware of it, right? But they begin to use that terminology. But at the same time that Brahminical treatise, even if it is being composed in South India, is talking about this, the South Indian inscription, whether it is of the Chalukyas of Badami, whether it is of the Cholas of a later point of time, whether it is in texts that are there, that are being written in Tamil or Kannada or in other places, their understanding of what their identity is their region. So, we have to understand that in history you cannot impose an identity you want today on the past. That identity itself is something that evolves. And that's why we need to bring nuance into the way in which we study concepts. What Chithra said, that the term and the concept and the way in which these ideas develop, they're not static. So this is something, even something like what we see as holding Indian society together. Again, this is a colonial Dane. it's a colonial legacy to see caste as the one thing that defines India. And look at all of us, we sometimes so uncritically accept it, whether it is to agree or disagree. How we, accept that caste is something, some people say it's very good, it was only professions. NCERT textbooks are now telling us that caste was there, it's only professions. Okay, and we shouldn't use the term caste, we should use Varna and Jati. I agree, actually, because these are separate concepts, but they do come together. Varna is there in the Purusha Sukta, verse 12. Yeah? Brahmana Mukhamasi. From the face, Brahmana is coming. From the Bahu, you have the Kshatriya coming. From the Uru, you have the Vaishya coming. From the Pada, you have the Shudra coming. It's there in Purusha Suktam, which is in the 10th mandala of the Rig Veda. But the way in which this Varna, so this is a hymn in praise of the cosmic Purusha. We should also put that in context. However, even when we put it in context, it's just a ritual idea, a ritualistic way of understanding and imagining and offering worship. Even then, we could think, why is the Brahmana not the Pada? Huh? Why is the Shudra not from the Mukham? So there is some ordering, over there. So this is something that is commonsensical also, but it's more than commonsensical. It is rooted in a social hierarchy that is developing. But that development then gets, accentuated through a different kind of identity formation that we see in the later Vedas. And that is the idea of Jati. And Jati is where clan identities, tribal identities, professional identities are becoming consolidated as they come within the newly evolving state and society, which is part of the Vedic knowledge culture as it is expanding. So this is why, as historians then, I would like that we talk about this. Caste in South India, yes, we have it. But we don't have it the way in which in Tamil Nadu, as ma'am will be able to tell us, even more clearly, we do not have it the way you have it in North India. In Tamil Nadu, we have what is called, we have the Brahmana and we have the non-Brahmana. And in the non-Brahmana, you have the ruling caste and you have those who are right at the bottom. But you have a vertical separation or division which is called Valangai and Idangai. The right and the left hand caste. So in different parts of this country, Varna and Jati take on a different form. And that's why the historian has to bring that nuance, has to bring that difference in, because it is contextual. How that development takes place is extremely important for us to note. And there is no doubt that there are some general ways in which those who are seen as belonging to the lower caste, so especially the Shudras and those who are born of what are called the Pratiloma unions, Pratiloma marriages, going against the grain. Matlab they say ek to ki Varna mein, within the Varna categorization, you should marry broadly within your Varna. But actually what happens is you are marrying broadly within Jadi. Yeah? You are marrying broadly within the Jati. But nevertheless, what Manu is telling us is that you marry broadly within that. But a Brahmin is allowed to marry a Kshatriya woman, a Brahmin man, a Kshatriya woman, a Vaishya woman, and a Shudra woman. A Kshatriya likewise is able to marry the other two. It's not accepted, it is not seen favorably, but it is possible. These are called Anuloma. Pratiloma is where now a Shudra man is marrying a Brahmin woman, which is seen as an absolute no-no by Manu. But Manu is saying there are children born of these. Iska matlab kya? What does it mean? It means that these are things that are happening in society. So on the one hand, we can say that, Manu is terrible and he has these prescriptions and so on. But Manu himself is aware that in society there are things that are happening which he has no control over. There are so many different kinds of mixings that are happening, and so that is where the historian comes in.
Chitra, if you were to include something from in the textbooks, school textbooks today, what do you see missing when it comes to your specific area of expertise of reading inscriptions? Because I feel this is an area in which children need to be trained right from a very early age in order for them to develop that understanding, nuanced understanding of things. What would you like to be included?
A very strong dose of cultural history is what is needed in our history textbooks. Political history, yes, to set the background, you have to understand the dynasties, the dates and all that. Economic and cultural, social history also. For example, you have to tell a child what kind of trade went on. Take the Cholas, for example, how they traded with Southeast Asia, how they traded with China. All these countries were extremely important to them. To Sri Lanka, with so many countries. Much earlier than that, we had trade with Rome, etc. What is it that they gave us? What is exactly it is that we gave them? Why were we so important to them? Why were they so important to us? Where did they come all the way? These are things that will make children sit up and think. And in every state in India, in every city, town and village, you have cultural artifacts. You have something or the other. There is no dearth of that in a country like India. I'm wondering how on earth for so many decades we have managed to make history such a boring subject when all around us there is so much to appreciate and to, take in. This is what we should be doing. This cannot happen. These textbooks need to be completely rewritten. Cultural history. Take a child out to, how much you have in Odisha, how much we have all over India, Tamil Nadu, etc., etc. Take them to the site and explain. The child will never, ever hate this subject again. Never, ever.
And before I let you go, I would like to now come back to that question to you, Mahalakshmi, because I know you're very excited about the question in itself, and you did your own bit of research and you want to share, and I would like you to share. What is it that, we have these digital mapping, there are better dating methods happening. How has the new technology changed the way we are viewing history?
Right. Actually, there is so much that is exciting, and technologies are one part of it. But even traditional archaeology is giving us just so much to think about, so much in terms of re-evaluating how historical processes developed. The first example of that is what is the excavations in Tamil Nadu, which are the Kiradi excavations. And this is along the Vaigai River, and at least 100 sites have been identified, but only one has been excavated in such a detailed manner. And what have we found in this excavation? We have found a very flourishing urban site. It has large and small bricks, meaning that you are putting in effort into creating a settlement that is a stable settlement. Find all kinds of material objects made of gold even. Gold beads have been found. Ivory has been found. Dice made of ivory have been found here. You have a lot of terracotta objects, but also iron objects that have been found, which is of a scale that is quite remarkable. And what has happened is because of the dating methods that we have, we have been able to ascertain that the lowest level, cultural level that we have been able to excavate, possibly, until I read the report, I don't want to say it definitively. As you all know, there is a controversy over the report, but we do know because some parts of these have been published. So on the basis of that, what I can say is that definitely it goes back at least 2 centuries before what we thought was the dawn of an urban civilization in the south. So it's amazing what this is doing. What is also happening with it is we have always thought that writing, the script, the lipi that we have of Brahmi, It comes to the south because of Ashoka. Now, with the new dating that has been found, this dating actually for quite a few years, discussion has happened on this. These samples of the pottery with some paddy husk or something else, it is the organic material that can be dated. They've been sent to the best labs across the world. Beta Analytics is this lab in Miami, Florida. They have given us a definite dating. Other places have also given us within India this dating. It is definitely pre-Ashokan. It's going back before the time of Ashoka. What does it mean then? What does it mean? What kind of historical narrative can we create now when we are actually seeing a flourishing urban civilization that may be coeval with the civilization that has developed in North India at around the same time, between the 6th and the 4th centuries BC. At the same time you have in South India, but before they had evidence of script, they must have had writing. There was a lot of trade and exchanges and so on taking place. But in terms of evidence for it, that Brahmi script, which we see as so important, the earliest we find is from Tamil Nadu. It's amazing. I'm not being chauvinistic when I say that this is amazing. It just means that for all of us who have always said that Sangam literature, which is talking about this flourishing urban civilization, but the archaeology is not matching with it, that means these poets were just imagining things. It didn't really exist. But now we are being proven wrong. We are finding the evidence for it. So that's what is remarkable. The second most important thing is about technology. And here, again, it's from Tamil Nadu. But that's because a lot of time and money has been put into it. But in sites like Shivagalai, Kodumanal, and Adichanallur, in all of these sites, they have found iron smelting furnaces. Now, iron can be made through different processes, but the smelting furnaces, and that too of the type you find here, is of a high order. It means you have to have a controlling of the fire. It means that you have to ensure that there is enough oxygenation at the right point of time when the metal is melting. So that is what we have evidence of. And do you know that the earliest evidence that we have is going to the early 4th millennium, late 3rd millennium BC. That is 3200 BC to 2800 BC are the broad calibrated dates we are getting. This is the earliest in the world. Actually, before this, we only had around the same time, maybe late 3rd millennium, from Egypt. The other thing related to this, so once you get this, then you have other processes, manufacturing of steel. I think Ashwin Sanghi mentioned steel. Steel, our first find is of the mid-2nd millennium BC, 1500 BC. These are the dates we are getting for it. Again, the first time in the world. The first evidence in the world, that we have of this. Who knows? There'll be excavation somewhere else in another part of the world and we'll find something earlier over there. But it's still an exciting thing to see this kind of development. So history is something where our knowledge expands or it changes as we find new sources of this kind. And I think that is what is so exciting about the times we live in, that we have such fascinating discussions and discoveries. There's a newspaper article I saw that the Halley's Comet, Halley itself discovered this only in the 18th century, but we use the term Halley's Comet because he talks of this comet. Every 72 to 81 years, there is this comet that goes through the, whatever you call it. It is visible to the naked eye. So you don't even need instrumentation. It's visible to the naked eye. And there is an inscription from Sri Sailam dated to 28th June 1546, which is almost exactly at the time of this Halley's Comet, which is talking of it as Dhumaketu.
Yeah.
So again, very important and interesting to know that there is a knowledge, there is a recognition of these kinds of phenomena and so on.
These are very exciting times, and I think we could have gone on with this discussion, but I have to bring it to a close. I think it's also, while we are talking about history on political platforms, we should also need to continue to re-evaluate it with every generation and with every advancement that we see. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time today, and it's been very insightful. And thank you, thank you.